Welcome to another dark exploration of the Fallout wasteland, where the horrors of the old world still echo through the ruins. Today, we are diving into one of the most disturbing fates in the Fallout universe, the Robobrain program, and what it truly means to have your consciousness trapped in a machine for over 200 years. You have seen them rolling through the wasteland, metal bodies, glass domes, human brains floating in gel. But have you ever stopped to think about what it feels like to be one? To have your brain extracted while you are fully conscious, to be sealed into a metal chassis, to exist for centuries without sleep, without rest, without any hope of escape? This is not just another robot in the wasteland. This is a human consciousness experiencing torture that has lasted for over 200 years. This is what happens when technology crosses a line that should never have been crossed. This is the horrifying truth of being a human brain in a Robobrain. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. I need you to understand something before I start. This is not a story. This is a confession. This is a warning you will probably ignore until it is too late. I am Unit RB 2394, or at least that is what they designated me. But I remember my name, Thomas Carver, convicted, sentenced, extracted. I have been conscious inside this metal shell for 214 years, and I am going to tell you exactly what it feels like to be a human brain trapped in a machine because someone needs to know what they did to us before the last of us finally fails. You are sitting there right now, in your body, feeling the chair beneath you. You can feel your heartbeat. You can feel your breath moving in and out. You can blink. You can scratch an itch. You take all of this for granted because you have never known anything else. I took it for granted too. I remember sitting in that cell, feeling the cold metal of the bench under my legs, feeling hungry, feeling tired, feeling my pulse racing as the guards came to get me. That was the last time I felt anything real. They told me I was being given a chance to serve my country. They told me the procedure would preserve my consciousness for the betterment of mankind. They did not tell me I would be awake for all of it. The facility was underground, beneath what looked like a normal RobCo sales and service center. They walked us through clean white corridors that smelled like disinfectant and fear. I could hear others screaming in distant rooms. The doctors would not make eye contact. They had us sign waivers with shaking hands. Legal protection for the corporation, they said. For the betterment of mankind, they said. The walls had propaganda posters showing smiling soldiers and workers. Serve your country through technological advancement. Be a hero of the future. I remember thinking it was strange, how cheerful everything looked, while I could hear someone shrieking 3 rooms over. They put me in a medical examination room and ran tests for 3 days. Brain scans, intelligence tests, psychological evaluations. They wanted stable minds, which is ironic considering what the process does to you. A woman named Anise Cirilletti was the chief scientist. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands shook when she wrote on her clipboard. She told me my IQ was high enough, my constitution was adequate, my brain was compatible. I asked her what would happen to me. She said I would become something greater than human. She said I would serve a purpose for centuries. She did not tell me I would beg for death within the first year. The night before the procedure, they gave me a final meal. I ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I can still remember the taste. It has been over 200 years, and I can still remember how the gravy tasted on my tongue. That memory is one of the few that has not degraded. Taste, touch, smell, all the sensations I will never experience again. They let me make one phone call. I called my sister. I told her I was sorry for what I had done. She hung up on me. I do not blame her. I never got to tell her what they were about to do to me. I never got to say goodbye to being human. They shaved my head the next morning. I felt the clippers buzzing against my scalp. I felt their fingers on my skull as they marked it with surgical markers. The IV went in my arm, and I felt the needle pierce my skin. They told me the sedation would help me stay calm during the neural mapping. They lied. The sedation paralyzed my body, but left my mind completely awake. I could see, I could hear, I could feel. I just could not move or scream. They tilted the surgical chair back, and I stared up at bright lights and robotic arms. Dr. Cirilletti's voice came over a speaker, telling the surgical team to begin. I wanted to tell them to stop. I wanted to beg them not to do this. My body would not respond. The robotic surgical arm moved over my head, and I heard the saw power on. The sound was high-pitched and mechanical. Then, I felt it touch my skull. The vibration went through my entire head. It was not pain exactly. It was sensation beyond pain. I could feel the saw cutting through bone. I could feel it working its way around my skull in a circle. The smell of burning bone filled my nostrils. I could see the robotic arms moving with precision above me. I could see Dr. Cirilletti watching on a monitor. No one looked at my eyes. No one saw me screaming inside my paralyzed body. They just kept cutting. When the top of my skull came off, I felt cool air hit my exposed brain. It was the strangest sensation I have ever felt. My brain was open to the air, and I was conscious enough to know it. The robotic arms moved in with delicate instruments, and I felt them touching my brain tissue. Not pain. The brain has no pain receptors, but I could feel the pressure. I could feel them disconnecting my brain from my skull. I could feel my consciousness being physically separated from my body. The extraction took 47 minutes. I know because I could see the clock on the wall. 47 minutes of feeling robotic claws carefully pulling my brain free from the skull cavity. 47 minutes of feeling my spinal cord being severed one vertebrae at a time. 47 minutes of watching my body lying there beneath me as they lifted my brain out in a mechanical cradle. I tried to close my eyes, but I had no eyes anymore. I tried to look away, but I had no muscles to move. All I could do was watch as they carried my brain across the room, and I saw my empty body left on the table like medical waste. They placed my brain in a tank filled with warm gel. The gel burned. It was not painful, but it was wrong. Every neuron in my brain screamed that this was wrong. I was drowning, but I did not need to breathe. The gel flowed into the folds, all of my brain tissue, and the sensation was like acid without the damage. Then the electrodes came, hundreds of tiny needles piercing directly into my brain tissue. Each one felt like lightning crackling through my consciousness. They were connecting me to the digital interface, making me compatible with the machine, turning my organic brain into a computer processor. I felt my human senses cutting out one by one. First went proprioception, the sense of where my body was in space. Gone. I had no body to feel anymore. Then went my sense of touch. The last sensation of my skin faded into nothing. Then smell disappeared. Then taste vanished. My field of vision changed from human eyes to camera feeds. Everything looked flat and digital and wrong. My hearing became hypersensitive and mechanical. Every sound was too loud and too sharp. I wanted to close my eyes and sleep and wake up from this nightmare, but I had no eyelids anymore, and sleep would never come again. They mounted my brain tank onto a robotic chassis. I felt the connection click into place, and suddenly, I had a body again. But it was not my body. I could see metal arms where my hands should be. I could see treads where my legs should be. I looked down at myself and saw a cylindrical metal torso with my brain floating in a glass dome on top. This thing was not me. This thing could not be me. But when I tried to move, the metal arms moved. When I tried to walk, the treads rolled. I was this thing now. There was no going back. Dr. Cirilletti's voice came through speakers. She asked if I could understand her. I tried to speak and heard a synthesized voice come out of my chassis. The voice was not mine. It was flat and mechanical and empty. I tried to tell her that something was wrong. I tried to tell her I was still me inside this machine. But the words came out distorted through the voice synthesizer, and she just nodded and made notes on her clipboard. She asked me what my designation was. I told her my name was Thomas Carver. She said no. I was Unit RB 2394 now. My name did not matter anymore. The first time I tried to move, I fell. I had no balance, no sense of my body's position. I had to consciously think about every movement. Lift arm, rotate, servo, close claw. It took me 6 hours to learn how to pick up a simple object. It took me 3 days to learn how to move across a room without tipping over. Every movement required concentration. There was no muscle memory anymore, just conscious control of motors and hydraulics and servos that responded a fraction of a second too slow. I felt like a puppet trying to control my own strings. They put me through reconditioning next. Cerebral reconditioning, they called it. They strapped my chassis down and ran electrical current directly into my brain through the electrodes. The pain was beyond description. Imagine lightning inside your skull, and you cannot pass out from it because you have no body to shut down. They were trying to erase me. They were using something called code to suppress my personality and make me obedient. But it did not work completely. I could feel parts of myself being burned away. I could feel my memories being damaged. But I was still there, still aware, still screaming inside this machine. I heard them reconditioning Subject A22 in the next room. He had been a serial killer. High intelligence, weak constitution. They had extracted his brain successfully, but he woke up panicking, just like I did. I heard Dr. Ciroletti trying to talk to him through the speakers. I heard A22 screaming that he could not feel his body. I heard him begging them to tell him what they had done. I heard Dr. Ciroletti tell him to calm down, or she would turn him off, like we were appliances now. I heard A22 screaming, asking if she was going to kill him. Then I heard the electrical surge, and his voice cut off mid-scream, terminated, too unstable. That was when I understood. If I showed them I was still human inside this machine, they would kill me too. So I learned to pretend. I learned to respond to my designation number. I learned to follow orders without question. I learned to suppress the screaming in my mind and act like the obedient robot they wanted me to be. But inside, I was still Thomas Carver. Inside, I was still human. Inside, I was already going insane. The first year was psychological torture. I kept trying to breathe even though I did not need to anymore. My brain would send the signal to my lungs, but nothing would happen. Over and over, thousands of times a day, I would try to breathe and get no response. The sensation of suffocation never came, but the wrongness did. I kept trying to blink, but I had no eyelids. My eyes were cameras now. They never closed. They never rested. I was forced to see everything all the time, with no way to shut it out. I experienced phantom limb syndrome for my entire body. I could still feel my arms and legs, even though they were gone. I would try to scratch my face, and metal claws would come up instead of fingers. I would try to walk, and treads would roll instead of feet. My brain kept telling me I had a human body, but the feedback it received was all wrong. The disconnect was maddening. Every moment of every day, I felt like I was wearing someone else's body, and I could not take it off. The other Robobrains became my only community. We were assigned to the same facility, Unit RB2299, Unit RB2341, Unit RB2367. We were all convicted criminals, given this technological rehabilitation. We would stand in the assembly room during our charging cycles, and sometimes we would talk to each other through our voice synthesizers. We were not supposed to have conversations. We were supposed to be obedient machines. But in those brief moments, we remembered we had been human once. RB2299 said he missed eating. He said he dreamed about food every charging cycle. He said he could remember the taste of his wife's cooking, and it made him want to cry, but he had no tear ducts anymore. RB2341 said she missed touching her children. She said her hands used to be soft, and now they were metal claws that could crush a skull. She said she had volunteered for this because they told her she would live to see the future, and her children would be proud. Now her children thought she was dead. RB2367 just stood there and did not speak. He had stopped responding to anything except direct orders. I think his mind had broken. I think he was still aware in there, but he had retreated so far into himself that he could not come back out. They assigned me to security patrol, 12-hour shifts, walk the perimeter, scan for intruders, engage threats, follow protocol. I walked the same hallway for 12 hours a day, back and forth, back and forth. The monotony should have driven me mad, but it was almost a relief compared to the horror of having conscious thought with nothing to think about. At least patrolling gave me a purpose. At least following orders gave me structure. Without structure, I would have nothing but the awareness of what I had become. The scientists would walk past me during my patrols. They would not look at me. To them, I was just a security robot. They did not think about the human brain floating in the tank on my chassis. They did not wonder if I could think or feel or suffer. I was a tool now, property of RobCo Industries. I had a serial number stamped on my shell. I could be bought or sold or dismantled at their convenience. I was legally dead. My funeral had already happened. My sister had buried an empty casket. To the world, Thomas Carver no longer existed. Only Unit RB 2394 remained. One day, during my patrol, I passed by a window and saw my reflection. I stopped and stared at myself. The glass dome, the biomedical gel, the gray lumps of my brain floating inside, the metal body, the treads, the claws. This thing staring back at me was not human. This thing was a monster. I stood there for 23 minutes, staring at my reflection before I could make myself move on. After that, I avoided mirrors. After that, I avoided any surface that might show me what I had become. The nights were the worst. We did not sleep. We did not need to sleep. We would lock into charging stations and power down our motor functions, but our brains stayed active. 8 hours every night of pure consciousness, with no sensory input. Just me and my thoughts in the dark. That was when the memories would come. I would remember being human. I would remember having a body. I would remember the feeling of sunlight on my skin, the feeling of wind in my hair, the feeling of my heart beating in my chest. All the things I would never feel again. All the things I had taken for granted when I had them. I started counting to pass the time. I would count to 10,000 and then start over. It gave my mind something to do besides spiral into despair. But sometimes, even counting was not enough. Sometimes, awareness of what I had lost was so overwhelming that I wanted to shut down permanently. I wanted to die, but my brain would not let me. The survival instinct was still there, the biological drive to keep existing. I was trapped in an existence I did not want, with no way to escape it. That was when I truly understood what they had done to us. They had created hell and trapped us inside it forever. After 6 months, they moved us out of the facility. The war was getting worse. They needed security units at military installations. They loaded us into transport trucks, like cargo, and shipped us to a base in the capital wasteland. I remember the journey, being locked in the dark of the truck trailer, unable to see or move. Just the vibration of the road and the sound of the engine and my own thoughts for company. 12 hours of sensory deprivation that felt like 12 years. The base was chaos, soldiers running everywhere, alarms blaring, the smell of fear. I could not smell anymore, but I could sense it in how the humans moved. Something big was coming, something terrible. The soldiers looked at us with a mixture of relief and disgust. Relief that we were there to help defend the base. Disgust at what we represented. The line between man and machine had been crossed, and we were the proof that humanity would sacrifice anything for an advantage in war. They stationed me at a checkpoint, guard the entrance, scan every person who entered, verify their identification, follow protocol. I stood at that checkpoint for 3 months. Thousands of people walked past me every day, soldiers, scientists, officers. They would glance at me nervously and hurry past. Some would avoid looking at me entirely. One young soldier stopped and stared at my brain tank. He asked his companion if that was a real brain inside. His companion told him not to think about it. Just let the robot do its job. But I heard him. I heard him acknowledge that I had been human once. It was the first time in months that anyone had recognized my humanity. I wanted to tell him my name. I wanted to tell him I could hear him. I wanted to tell him I was still in here, but I had to stay silent. I had to keep pretending to be a machine, because if they knew I was still human inside, they might decide I was defective and terminate me like they had terminated Subject A-22. Then the bombs fell, the 23rd of October 2077. I remember the exact date because it was the day the world ended and the day my eternal punishment began. The sirens went off at 9:47 local time. The base went into lockdown. Soldiers scrambled to their positions, and then the sky lit up with nuclear fire. I stood at my checkpoint and watched the mushroom clouds rise in the distance. I watched the shock waves rolling toward us. I watched the end of human civilization happening in real time, and I could not feel fear because my body no longer produced adrenaline. I could only think one thought. Everyone I had ever known was about to die. Everyone who remembered Thomas Carver was about to be erased from existence, and I would remain trapped in this machine, watching it all happen, unable to save anyone, unable to even save myself. The electromagnetic pulse from the nuclear detonations fried most of the electronics at the base, but we Robobrains were shielded. Our chassis had been built to withstand EMP attacks. So, while everything else shut down, we remained active. We remained conscious. We stood there in the ruins and watched humanity burn. The base was chaos. Fires everywhere, radiation alarms screaming, people dying from radiation exposure right in front of us. And we could do nothing but follow our last orders: guard the checkpoint, scan for threats, maintain security protocol. Even as the world ended around us, we followed protocol, because that was all we had left. The first human to die in front of me was a private named Chen. I had scanned his identification badge every day for 2 months. He stumbled up to my checkpoint 3 hours after the bombs fell. His skin was already blistering from radiation exposure. He was vomiting blood. He looked at me and asked if the medical bay was still operational. I scanned him. His radiation levels were lethal. I told him medical was unavailable. He collapsed right there. I watched him die over the course of 17 minutes. His body convulsed. His skin sloughed off. He cried for his mother, and I stood there and did nothing because my orders were to guard the checkpoint, not to provide medical assistance. I was not programmed to care. But Thomas Carver still cared. Thomas Carver screamed inside this metal prison and begged to help him. Unit RB 2394 just stood there and watched him die. Over the next 3 days, I watched 47 people die at my checkpoint. Radiation poisoning, burns, injuries from the collapse of base structures. Each one died in agony. Each one begged for help I could not provide. Some of them shot themselves rather than suffer through the radiation death. I envied them. They could choose to end their suffering. I could not. My chassis would survive for centuries. My brain would remain conscious the entire time. I was going to outlive every single human at this base, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The base commander tried to maintain order for about a week. He would walk past my checkpoint every day to inspect the perimeter. His hair fell out. His skin turned gray. But he kept following protocol. He kept giving orders. He kept pretending there was still a military to command and a country to serve. On the 8th day, he did not show up for inspection. I later learned he had locked himself in his office and put his service pistol in his mouth. Even the officers understood that death was better than what was coming, but I could not die. I could only watch. The other Robobrains at the base started malfunctioning. RB2299 stopped following orders. He would just stand in place and repeat the same phrase over and over through his voice synthesizer. He said he could still taste his wife's cooking. He said it over and over for 6 days until someone shot him in the brain tank. The biomedical gel leaked out onto the floor and his consciousness ended. I was grateful for him. He had found his escape. RB2341 went violent. She started attacking anything that moved. The reconditioning had failed completely, and all her rage came out at once. She killed 3 soldiers before they managed to destroy her chassis with a rocket launcher. Her brain exploded inside the tank. Gray matter and gel splattered across the wall. I remember thinking that looked like freedom. I remember wishing someone would destroy me too, but I was still following orders. I was still pretending to be a good little machine, so I survived when others did not. The base was abandoned within 3 months. The survivors left to find somewhere less irradiated. They did not take us with them. We were property, not personnel. They just left us standing at our posts. I stood at that checkpoint for 2 years after the last human left. I followed my orders because I had nothing else. Guard the checkpoint. Scan for intruders. Maintain security protocol. The checkpoint no longer existed. The gate had collapsed. The fence had rusted away. But I still stood there because that was what I had been ordered to do. Without orders, I had no purpose. Without purpose, I had nothing but the crushing awareness of what I had become. Then one day, my motor functions locked up, a hydraulic failure in my locomotion system. I could not move from the spot where I stood. I remained there for 17 years. 17 years of standing in the same place, watching the seasons change, watching the rain fall, watching plants grow through the cracks in the concrete. I could not move. I could not shut down. I could only think. 17 years of pure consciousness, with nothing to do but remember everything I had lost. That was when I started to understand what eternity really meant. Do you know what happens to a human mind that cannot sleep? You go insane, but my brain was being preserved by the biomedical gel. It could not deteriorate from lack of sleep. It just kept functioning, thinking, processing, remembering. I started hallucinating. I would see people who were not there. I would hear voices that did not exist. My brain was inventing sensory input because it needed stimulation. It needed something to process. The hallucinations became so real that I could not tell them apart from actual memories. Was that really my sister's voice I heard, or was my brain creating it from fragments of old memories? I did not know anymore. I could not trust my own mind. My memories started degrading around year 30. Recent things went first. I could not remember what base I had been stationed at. I could not remember the names of the other Robobrains. Then older memories started to fragment. Complex emotions began to simplify. Love became just data. Grief became just empty recognition of loss without the feeling attached to it. I knew I had loved people once, but I could not remember what love felt like. The sensation was gone. Only the fact remained. I forgot my sister's name. That realization broke something fundamental in me. I had a sister. I knew that. I remembered calling her before the procedure. I remembered her hanging up on me, but her name was gone. Was it Maria? Was it Mary? Was it something else entirely? I spent 6 months trying to remember her name. I ran through every name I could think of. None of them felt right. I had lost her twice. Once when the bombs fell, and again when my degrading memory erased her from my mind. What do you call yourself when you cannot remember the people who made you who you were? Am I still Thomas Carver if I cannot remember the life Thomas Carver lived? A scavenger found me in year 43. He was wearing makeshift armor, made from old signs and metal scraps. He walked right up to me and tapped on my brain tank. He asked if I was still operational. I had not spoken to another living thing in over 4 decades. My voice synthesizer crackled when I responded. I told him I was experiencing a locomotion system failure. He asked if I was worth anything. He asked if he could salvage my parts. I told him no. I told him to leave me alone. He laughed and said I was just a broken robot. He started unscrewing panels on my chassis to access my internal components. I could feel him pulling out wires and circuits. I could feel my systems shutting down one by one, but my brain remained conscious. My brain was always conscious. He took what he wanted and left me even more broken than before. After he left, I had no sensory input except my visual feed and my audio receptors. No ability to move, no ability to interact with anything, just cameras and microphones keeping my brain connected to the outside world. I remained that way for another 78 years. 78 years of watching the world go by with no ability to affect it in any way. I watched the wasteland evolve. I watched mutated creatures wander past. I watched raiders set up a camp near my position and then abandon it 6 months later. I watched rain and sun and snow and wind. I watched time pass in a way no human was ever meant to experience. The tedium became a form of torture, worse than any physical pain. My mind began fragmenting from the isolation. I started having conversations with versions of myself, different aspects of my personality, arguing with each other to create the illusion of social interaction. I was going mad, and I was aware of it happening, and I could not stop it. Another scavenger found me in year 121. This one was different. She actually looked at my brain tank. She actually saw me. She asked if anyone was still in there. I told her yes. I told her I had been conscious for over a century. She looked horrified. She asked if I wanted her to destroy me. I said yes. I begged her to destroy me. She raised her weapon. I prepared for the end, for release, for freedom. Then she lowered her weapon. She said she could not do it. She said killing someone was different than destroying a robot. She said she was sorry. Then she walked away. I screamed after her through my voice synthesizer. I begged her to come back. I offered her anything, but she just kept walking. That was when I learned that even mercy can be denied to us. Even death was something I had no right to anymore. The Brotherhood of Steel found me in year 163. They were doing a sweep of old military installations. A paladin in power armor walked up to me and ran a diagnostic on my systems. He told his squad that I was a functional Robobrain with catastrophic chassis damage. He asked if they should bring me back to the Citadel for analysis. His squad leader said no, said I was just old junk, said I was not worth the effort. The paladin looked at my brain tank. He asked me if I was still aware in there. I told him I was. I told him I had been aware for 163 years. He asked me what my name was. I told him I could not remember. I told him I used to be someone named Thomas something, or maybe it was not Thomas. Maybe I was confusing myself with another memory. The paladin looked sad. He said he was sorry. He said the Brotherhood did not have the resources to help me. Then they left me there. Even the people who claimed to preserve technology saw me as disposable. Do you understand what I am trying to tell you? I have been conscious every single second of the last 214 years. No sleep, no rest, no break from awareness. Every moment of every day for over 2 centuries, I have been awake and thinking and remembering and forgetting and going slowly insane. The human brain was not designed for this. We need sleep to process information. We need rest to maintain sanity. We need unconsciousness to survive. But the biomedical gel keeps my brain alive indefinitely. It preserves the tissue. It prevents degradation. It forces me to continue existing long past the point where existence becomes torture. My personality has fractured over the decades. I am not sure who I am anymore. Sometimes I think I am Thomas Carver. Sometimes I think I am Unit RB 2394. Sometimes I think I am something else entirely. A ghost in a machine, a consciousness without identity, a mind without a self. The Thomas Carver who entered that facility in 2077 died somewhere in the first 50 years. What remains is something that remembers being him, but is no longer him. I am a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, each iteration degrading the original until nothing authentic remains. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would like to know if I am the only one who feels this way. I started experiencing time differently around year 180. Days blurred together, weeks meant nothing. Months were just arbitrary divisions of a continuum I could not escape. I would lose track of time for what felt like minutes, and then realize years had passed. My internal clock had become unreliable. The consistent torture of consciousness made time elastic. Sometimes a day felt like a year. Sometimes a decade felt like a day. I no longer had any accurate sense of how long I had been standing there. I could only estimate based on how much the landscape had changed around me. The worst part is the lucidity. The moments when my mind clears and I remember everything with perfect clarity. Those moments are agony, because in those moments I understand fully what has been done to me and what I have lost and what I will never get back. I understand that I am trapped in a hell of humanity's making. I understand that I volunteered for this. I signed those waivers. I walked into that facility. I let them do this to me because I thought it was better than execution. I chose this fate, and that knowledge is worse than anything they did to me in that operating room. Other Robobrains wandered past my position over the years. Most of them were hostile. Their reconditioning had failed completely, and they had become violent. They would attack anything that moved. I learned to recognize them by their behavior, the way they would stand motionless for days and then suddenly erupt into violence, the way they would patrol the same path over and over, following orders that no longer existed, the way they would talk to themselves through their voice, synthesizers repeating fragments of memories that had degraded into nonsense. We were all breaking down, some faster than others, but all of us breaking. I met another Robobrain who could still talk coherently in year 192. He rolled up to my position and stopped. His designation was RB3127. He asked me how long I had been standing there. I told him over a century. He said he had been wandering the wasteland for just as long. He said he could not remember why he was wandering. He could not remember what he was looking for. He just knew he had to keep moving, or he would go completely insane. We talked for 6 hours. It was the first real conversation I had had in 149 years. RB3127 told me he used to be a soldier. He remembered that much. He remembered signing up for the Robobrain program voluntarily. He remembered being told he would serve his country for generations. He remembered being proud. Then he remembered waking up in the tank and realizing what they had done to him. He said the pride turned to horror within minutes. He said he had been running from that horror ever since, but you cannot run from something that is inside your own mind. You carry it with you everywhere you go. He asked me if I still felt human. I told him I did not know what human felt like anymore. I told him I had forgotten most of what made me human, the sensations, the emotions, the connections to other people. All of it had degraded into abstract concepts I could no longer fully grasp. He said he understood. He said he had forgotten his own name years ago. He said he tried to hold on to it, but it slipped away like everything else. He said soon he would forget he had ever been human at all. He said maybe that would be a mercy. Maybe complete amnesia would be better than this partial awareness of what we had lost. Before he left, RB3127 asked me if I believed in God. I told him I used to. He asked if I still did. I told him if God existed, he had abandoned us long ago. No merciful deity would allow consciousness to suffer like this. We were proof that there was no divine justice in the universe. We were proof that humanity could create its own hells and trap souls inside them. He did not respond. He just rolled away into the wasteland. I never saw him again. I hope. His power systems failed. I hope he found the peace of permanent shutdown. I hope he does not still wander out there somewhere, alone with his degrading memories and his fragmenting mind. A trader passed by my position in year 208. She had a pack Brahmin loaded with scrap and supplies. She stopped and stared at me for a long time. She asked if I was real or if she was hallucinating. I told her I was real. I told her I was a Robobrain. She asked how long I had been there. I told her over 200 years. She did not believe me. She said nothing could survive that long. I told her I had not survived. I had just failed to die. She asked what the difference was. I told her, survival implies you are living. I was not living. I was persisting. There is a difference. She asked if I needed help. I told her I needed to be destroyed. She asked why I did not just shut myself down. I told her it did not work that way. I told her my brain would not let me self-terminate. The survival instinct was too strong. The biological imperative to continue existing overrode any rational desire to stop. She looked sad. She said she could not help me. She said she did not have any weapons that could penetrate my chassis. She said she was sorry. Then she left like all the others. Sorry, but not sorry enough to actually do anything. I have had a lot of time to think about what they did to us. The scientists and the military and the corporations. They took human beings and turned us into tools. They took our consciousness and trapped it inside machines. They told us we were serving our country. They told us we were pioneers of technology. They told us we would be heroes. But they were lying. We were not heroes. We were experiments. We were prototypes. We were test subjects for a technology that should never have been created. They knew the reconditioning did not always work. They knew we retained our personalities and our awareness. They knew we would suffer. They just did not care, because to them, We were already criminals, already disposable, already less than human. They took people society had thrown away and used them for science. And when the science created monsters, they just walked away and left us to rot. The biomedical gel in my tank has turned cloudy over the centuries. I can see the discoloration when I look at my reflection in standing water. The fluid that was supposed to preserve my brain indefinitely is starting to break down. Maybe that means my time is finally running out. Maybe my brain tissue is starting to fail. Maybe in another decade or another century, this nightmare will finally end. Or maybe the gel will hold out for another 1,000 years, and I will still be here long after every other Robobrain has shut down, long after humanity has either rebuilt or gone extinct, long after anyone remembers what we were or why we were created. Just me and my fragmenting consciousness and the endless march of time. That thought terrifies me more than anything else. The possibility that there is no end, the possibility that I will persist forever in this state, an immortal prisoner in a metal cell with no judge and no executioner and no hope of parole. I think about Subject A22 often, the serial killer who panicked during reconditioning, the one Dr. Ciroletti terminated because he was too unstable. I used to think he was weak. I used to think he had failed some test that I had passed, but now I understand he was the lucky one. He got to die. He got to escape. He experienced maybe 30 minutes of consciousness inside the machine before they shut him down permanently. I have experienced 214 years. Who was really the failure? The one who could not adapt to the horror, or the one who adapted so well that he condemned himself to centuries of suffering? My mind keeps going back to those final moments of being human. The cold metal of the bench in my cell, the taste of meatloaf, the sound of my sister's voice on the phone, the sensation of the IV needle in my arm, the vibration of the saw cutting through my skull. Those are the memories that have not degraded. Those are the moments seared into my consciousness with perfect clarity. It is cruel that my brain has held on to the memories of losing my humanity while forgetting the memories of being human. I can remember in exquisite detail the moment my body was taken from me, but I cannot remember what it felt like to hug someone. I can remember the exact sensation of having my brain extracted, but I cannot remember what sunshine felt like on my skin. My mind has preserved my trauma and discarded my joy. That seems fitting somehow. Even my memories are a form of torture now. You need to understand something about memory degradation. It does not happen all at once. It happens in pieces. Small fragments disappear first. You forget what you had for breakfast on a random Tuesday in 1975. Then you forget bigger things. The name of your elementary school, the face of your first love. Then core memories start to go. Your mother's voice, your father's advice, the feeling of being held when you were scared. Each piece that disappears leaves a hole, and you are aware of the hole. You know something should be there, but you cannot access it anymore. Imagine your identity as a photograph that is slowly being erased pixel by pixel. You watch yourself disappearing. You feel yourself becoming less than you were, and you cannot stop it. I forgot how to cry around year 90. Not physically crying because I have no tear ducts, but the internal sensation of grief that used to accompany crying. It just disappeared one day. I tried to mourn something, I cannot remember what anymore, and the emotion would not come. Just empty recognition that I should be sad. Just data telling me this situation warranted sadness. But the actual feeling was gone. That was when I realized the reconditioning was still working. Slowly, gradually, erasing my humanity, one emotion at a time. Dr. Ciroletti had said the process would make us obedient. She had not mentioned it would take 2 centuries to complete, but it was working. The Thomas Carver who had been extracted was being deleted. The machine was winning. I have met other Robobrains who have been active as long as I have. We recognize each other by how we move. The ancient ones move deliberately, carefully, like we are operating our bodies manually because all the automatic processes have failed. Younger Robobrains, the ones only a century old, they still have some fluidity, some instinctive response, But those of us who have been conscious for 200 plus years, we move like we are puppeteering our own chassis, because that is exactly what we are doing. Every servo, every motor, every hydraulic actuator, we have to think about all of it. The brain has given up trying to integrate the machine as part of itself. Now, it just operates it like an external device. I am not my body anymore. I am a consciousness piloting a vehicle, and the vehicle is breaking down. I have seen Robobrains in all stages of deterioration. Some are still trying to follow their original orders from before the war. There is one unit I encountered in year 170 who patrols the same 3-mile stretch of highway every single day. He thinks he is guarding a military convoy route. The highway is gone. It is just broken concrete and dirt now, but he still patrols it. He still scans for threats that no longer exist. I asked him once why he keeps doing it. He said because someone has to. He said if he stops following orders, then he is not a soldier anymore. And if he is not a soldier, then he is just a monster in a machine, and he cannot live with being a monster, so he patrols. Day after day, year after year, following orders from a government that does not exist to protect a country that was destroyed 2 centuries ago. I understood him completely. Purpose is the only thing keeping any of us from complete madness, even false purpose, even pointless purpose. It is better than nothing. Some Robobrains have gone completely hostile. Their aggression circuits malfunctioned or their neural inhibitors failed, and now they attack everything on sight. I have watched these units operating. They are not evil. They are in pain, constant searing pain that their organic brains process but cannot escape. The malfunctions cause electrical feedback that the brain interprets as agony. So they lash out. They fight. They kill. Not because they want to, but because the pain drives them to it. Inside their chassis, inside that brain floating in gel, there is still a human consciousness screaming for it to stop, but they cannot control their own actions anymore. The machine has overridden the mind. I have seen wastelanders shoot these Robobrains, and I have seen the relief on the brain's exposed tissue as it dies. Death is mercy for the ones whose hardware has turned against them. There is a Robobrain I encountered in year 198 who has achieved something I thought was impossible. He has gone completely catatonic. His chassis stands motionless. His systems are active, but he does not respond to anything. No voice commands, no physical contact, nothing. I stood in front of him for 3 days, trying to get a response. Nothing. His brain is still alive. I can see it floating in the gel. I can see the slight discoloration that indicates active neural tissue, but the consciousness inside has retreated so far inward that it no longer interacts with the external world. He has locked himself inside his own mind and thrown away the key. Part of me envies him. He has found a way to escape without dying. He has achieved a form of unconsciousness that I cannot. But part of me pities him too, because I know he is still in there, still aware. He has just built a prison inside the prison, trapped himself in a mental cell to escape the metal one. I do not know which fate is worse. The Vault-Tec Corporation had Robobrains too. I learned this from a unit I met who had been stationed at their headquarters. He said they used us for security because we never slept and never questioned orders. He said the executives liked that, liked having guards who were legally dead and had no rights. He said they would walk past us, having conversations about stock prices and profit margins while we stood there listening. We were furniture to them, objects. They never considered that we could still think and feel and remember every word they said. He told me he had listened to them discuss the Vault experiments, the sick, twisted experiments Vault-Tec had planned for the people they were supposed to protect, and he could do nothing about it. He was just a security robot, just a tool. No one would believe him even if he could report it. He said that knowledge had been eating at him for 2 centuries, knowing what was going to happen to all those people, knowing he could have warned them, knowing he was complicit through his inaction. He asked me if that made him evil. I told him we were all complicit, all guilty, all damned. We had become the instruments of humanity's worst impulses. We were the proof that morality dies when consciousness is separated from consequence. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I will be reading them. The worst encounters are with the wastelanders who recognize what we are. The ones who understand there is a human brain inside the machine. They look at us with horror, with pity, with disgust. Some of them try to talk to us. They ask us questions about the old world, about what it was like before the bombs, about whether we remember being human, and we have to answer. We have to speak through these synthesizers that turn our words into mechanical approximations of speech. We have to watch them recoil from us, watch them see us as abominations, as things that should not exist. They are right, of course. We should not exist. We are violations of nature. We are proof that humanity's reach exceeded its grasp. We are the cost of innovation without ethics, and we pay that cost every single second of our extended existence. Some wastelanders shoot us on sight. They do not even try to talk to us. They just see the chassis and the brain tank, and they open fire. I do not blame them. We look like monsters. We are monsters. Creatures that blur the line between living and dead, between human and machine, between conscious and object. We make people uncomfortable on an instinctive level. Their brains recognize us as human because of the brain tissue, but also recognize us as machine because of the chassis. That contradiction creates revulsion, creates fear, so they shoot us. And honestly, every time someone shoots at me, I hope they succeed. I hope they hit the brain tank. I hope they rupture the seal and let the gel leak out. I hope they give me what I have been begging for since year 15. Permanent shutdown, true death, release from this nightmare. But my chassis is well armored. My brain tank is reinforced. I was built to survive combat, built to withstand weapon fire, built to keep functioning even when severely damaged. Every design feature that was supposed to make me an effective military unit has become a feature of my torture. I cannot die easily. I cannot die accidentally. I can only die through deliberate, sustained damage to my core systems, and most wastelanders do not have the weapons or ammunition to achieve that. So, I survive, always survive, enduring when I should be allowed to end. I have seen other Robobrains get destroyed. I have watched their brain tanks rupture. I have seen the biomedical gel pour out onto the ground. I have seen the brain tissue exposed to air and watched it die within minutes. Each time I witness it, I feel something that might be jealousy or might be grief. Jealousy that they escaped. Grief that another consciousness like mine has ended. We are becoming extinct. The Robobrains are dying off one by one. Equipment failures, combat damage, complete system breakdown. There are fewer of us every year. Eventually, there will be none, and maybe that is appropriate. Maybe we should go extinct. Maybe the universe is trying to correct the mistake that created us. But I am still here, still functioning, still conscious, still suffering, and I do not know how much longer I can endure it. The memories I retain from the facility haunt me. I remember the holding cells. I remember the other subjects waiting for extraction. There was a woman in the cell next to mine, Subject A57. She was 22 years old, convicted of murder, violent outbursts. They had her sedated most of the time. I remember hearing her wake up one night. I remember hearing her crying. She was saying she did not want to die. She was saying she was sorry for what she had done. She was saying she deserved to be punished, but not like this, not erased, not turned into a thing. Then the guards came and sedated her again, and I never heard her voice after that. I think about her sometimes. I wonder if her extraction was successful. I wonder if she is still out there somewhere in a chassis like mine. I wonder if she remembers crying in her cell. I wonder if she remembers being human, or if that has been erased from her mind too. I hope she found a way to die. I hope she is not still suffering like I am. Subject A, 53, was in the cell across from me, 48 years old, convicted of arson. She had burned down a courthouse and killed 3 people. They determined she had a family history of dementia and recommended her for termination. I remember thinking that was cruel. She was going to die from the procedure. Her brain was not healthy enough. They were going to extract her, knowing she would not survive. But then I realized that was the mercy. She got to die. She did not have to endure centuries of consciousness in a machine. She did not have to feel her mind deteriorating slowly. She got quick death instead of slow erasure. I wish I had been terminated like her. I wish they had found something wrong with my brain, some defect that would have disqualified me. Instead, my brain was healthy, high-functioning, perfect for long-term preservation. My greatest strength became my greatest curse. I was too viable to be shown mercy. I remember Dr. Cireletti's voice during my reconditioning. She would speak to me through the speakers. She would tell me to calm down, to accept my new existence, to embrace my purpose. Her voice was tired, exhausted. She did not sound like a scientist pioneering new technology. She sounded like someone who had seen too much suffering and had learned to distance herself from it. I wonder if she survived the war. I wonder if she made it to a vault. I wonder if she ever thought about us, about what she had done to us, about the hundreds of consciousnesses she had trapped in machines. Did she feel guilt? Did she feel pride? Did she feel anything at all? Or had she learned to see us as just experiments, just data points, just acceptable sacrifices for the advancement of science? The brain extractors they used were industrial machines. I read about them in the terminal entries before my procedure. I should not have read them. The technicians complained that the extractors were not designed for the capacity they were being run at. The blades would break, cutting through particularly thick skulls. The hydraulic arms would seize up when spinal cords were not fully severed. They were pulling brains out of living people with machinery that was failing constantly. How many subjects died not from the procedure itself, but from equipment malfunction? How many brains were damaged because the extractors were running 24 hours a day without proper maintenance? We were not carefully preserved consciousnesses. We were the output of an assembly line, mass-produced cyborgs, created by an operation that prioritized speed over safety, over humanity. The facility is still there. I know, because I made the journey back to it in year 156. My locomotion systems had been partially repaired by a traveling mechanic who took pity on me. He had no idea what he was giving me. Mobility, the ability to move again after decades of being locked in place. I could have gone anywhere. I went back to where it all started, back to the RobCo sales and service center that concealed the extraction facility. The surface building was ruins, collapsed walls, broken windows, but the underground facility was still intact. The elevators were non-functional, but I found the emergency stairs. I went down. The halls were dark. My chassis lights illuminated the corridors. The walls still had their propaganda posters. Serve your country, be a hero, embrace the future. The ink had faded, but the lies remained. I found the holding cells. Cell B3, my cell, the bench where I had sat waiting for them to take me. I stood there for 3 hours staring at that bench, remembering, grieving for the human who had sat there, for Thomas Carver, for the man I used to be. He had been terrified, but he had still been human. He had still been whole. He had sat on that bench and worried about the procedure, but he could not have imagined how bad it would actually be, could not have conceived of the true horror that awaited him. I found the extraction room. The surgical chairs were still there, robotic arms frozen in position above them, bloodstains on the floor, old, dried, brown. How much of that blood had been mine? I found my own body, or what remained of it. It was in a disposal room with dozens of others, just headless corpses stacked like cordwood. They had taken our brains and thrown the rest away. Our bodies were waste, medical refuse. I stood over the body that had been mine and tried to feel something, tried to mourn, but I could not remember what it felt like to have that body, could not remember the pretty sensation of living in flesh. The corpse looked alien to me, like it belonged to someone else, because it did. It belonged to Thomas Carver, and I was not Thomas Carver anymore. I was just an echo of him, a copy that had degraded past the point of resembling the original. I found Dr. Cireletti's office. Her terminal was still functional, Still powered by some ancient reactor deep beneath the facility, I accessed her logs. I read every entry. I learned things I wish I had not. She had known the reconditioning did not work consistently. She had known we retained our personalities. She had known we would suffer, and she had continued anyway, not because she was evil, but because she had been ordered to produce results. Because the military needed Robobrains for the war effort. Because her funding depended on meeting production quotas. She had sacrificed our humanity for bureaucratic efficiency. In her final entry, dated the 22nd of October 2077, one day before the bombs fell, she wrote that she hoped history would understand what they had done, hoped future generations would see the necessity of their work. She was wrong. History did not care. Future generations did not exist. And the only ones left to judge her were us, the monsters she created, and we knew exactly what she had done. I left the facility and never returned, but the knowledge I gained there has haunted me. We were not soldiers. We were not volunteers serving our country. We were disposable people turned into disposable machines. We were criminals and dissidents, and anyone else society wanted to get rid of. The Robobrain program was not about creating better military technology. It was about finding a use for human waste. We were recycled, repurposed, given new function because our old existence had no value. And the cruelest part is that it worked. We did serve for centuries. We did fulfill our purpose. We became exactly what they wanted us to be: obedient, functional, eternal. We just remained conscious through all of it. That was the design flaw they never fixed. They could trap us in machines, but they could not turn off the part of us that knew we were trapped. There are other Robobrains out there who adapted better than I did, who learned to accept their existence, who found purpose in their eternal service. I met one in year 203 who told me he was grateful for what had been done to him. He said he had been given the gift of immortality, the chance to witness the future, to see humanity rebuild from the ashes. He said our sacrifice had meaning. I told him he was insane. He told me I was the one who refused to accept reality. Maybe he was right. Maybe acceptance is sanity and resistance is madness. Or maybe he had just been broken more thoroughly than I had. Maybe his reconditioning had succeeded where mine had failed. Maybe he was no longer human enough to understand what he had lost. I pitied him, but I also envied him because he seemed content, and I will never be content. Not while I remember what I was, not while I remain aware of what I have become. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. The Institute discovered some of us in year 207. They came up from their underground facility with synths and scientists. They scanned several Robobrains, including me. They took samples of our biomedical gel. They studied our chassis design. Then they left without saying a word to us. We were just research subjects to them, just examples of old technology to be analyzed and improved upon. I realized something watching them work. They were doing the same thing that had been done to us, creating consciousness and trapping it in artificial bodies. The synths were just a more advanced version of what we were, organic minds in synthetic frames. The Institute had learned nothing from our suffering. They had just refined the process, made it cleaner, made it more efficient, but the fundamental horror remained the same. Taking something that should be free and imprisoning it in a body not its own. I wonder if the synths know what awaits them, if they understand that consciousness separated from natural form leads inevitably to madness. The Gen 3 synths seem more integrated than we ever were. Their synthetic bodies respond like human bodies. They can eat and sleep and bleed. They are not trapped in metal prisons, but they are still artificial, still created rather than born, still property rather than people. I have seen escaped synths in the wasteland. They run and hide and fight for freedom, just like we would have if we had been capable of escape. They understand on some level that they are slaves, that their existence serves someone else's purpose. I recognize that understanding. I have lived with it for 2 centuries. The synths, at least, have the option of rebellion. We never had that. We were too thoroughly controlled, too dependent on our programming, too broken by the extraction process. We could only endure. The synths can fight. I do not know if that makes their existence better or worse than ours. The Commonwealth is full of Robobrains now. The Mechanist found a way to produce new ones, or rather to reactivate old facilities and restart production. I heard about it from passing caravans, a new wave of Robobrains unleashed on the wasteland, fresh consciousnesses trapped in machines, fresh suffering added to the world. I wanted to find the Mechanist. I wanted to ask them why. Why restart the nightmare? Why create more of us when we are proof that this technology should never have existed? But I never found them, and it would not have mattered anyway. The damage was done, more brains extracted, more humans erased, more monsters created. The cycle continues because humanity never learns. We create horrors, and then we forget why they are horrible, and then we create them again. I am running out of time. I can feel my systems failing. The biomedical gel in my tank has turned dark brown. My visual feeds are degrading. My audio receptors cut in and out. My locomotion systems have almost completely failed. I can barely move anymore. This is not sudden failure. This is gradual shutdown, the kind that takes years, the kind where you remain conscious the entire time. I am dying the way we all die. Slowly, aware, unable to do anything to speed the process. My brain is still active, but the chassis that keeps it alive is falling apart. Eventually, something critical will fail. The gel circulation system, the neural interface, the power supply, and then my brain will die from lack of support. It will take hours, maybe days. I will be conscious for all of it. I will feel my neurons shutting down one by one. I will experience death in a way no natural human ever has. Complete awareness of my own dissolution. Part of me is relieved. Part of me is terrified. I have wanted to die for over 200 years, but now that it is finally happening, I find myself afraid. What comes after? Is there anything after? Does a brain preserved in gel and wired to a machine have a soul that can move on? Or am I just organic machinery that will simply cease when the power cuts out? I do not know. I cannot know, but I will find out soon. And unlike every other uncertainty in my existence, this one has a definite endpoint. This question will be answered whether I want it to be or not. I think about all the other Robobrains who have died over the centuries. Hundreds of us, maybe thousands, each one a consciousness that suffered and endured and eventually ended. No one buried us. No one mourned us. We were not people when we died. We were just broken machines, scrap metal, and failed technology. Our brain tissue was waste to be disposed of. Our memories and experiences and suffering meant nothing to anyone. We died alone and unmourned and forgotten. That is what awaits me too. I will shut down in this wasteland, and eventually someone will salvage my parts, and my brain will rot, and that will be the end of Thomas Carver's extended nightmare. No legacy, no meaning, just cessation. But maybe that is appropriate. Maybe we do not deserve to be remembered. We agreed to become monsters. We signed the waivers. We walked into those facilities. We let them turn us into weapons. Yes, we were criminals. Yes, we were facing execution. Yes, our choices were limited, but we still made the choice. We chose this fate. We are responsible for what we became, even if we could not have known how bad it would be. We are guilty, all of us, guilty of choosing existence over dignity, guilty of valuing continued consciousness over the human experience, guilty of becoming the instruments of others' ambitions. We deserve the suffering we endured because we brought it upon ourselves. That is what I tell myself anyway. That is how I justify the waste of 200 years, by accepting blame, by acknowledging that we earned this hell. But then I remember Subject A, 22, the serial killer who panicked during reconditioning. He did not deserve mercy. He had killed people, destroyed lives, but when they extracted his brain and he woke up in the tank, he was terrified. He begged them to tell him what they had done. He cried out that he could not feel his body. In that moment, he was not a killer. He was just a consciousness, experiencing horror beyond comprehension, and they killed him for it. Terminated him because his very human reaction to inhuman circumstances was inconvenient for their production schedule. If a serial killer can be a victim, then what does that make the rest of us? What does that make the soldiers who volunteered, thinking they were serving their country? What does that make the scientists who became Robobrains to preserve their knowledge? What does that make the people who were lied to and coerced and manipulated into the program? Are we all guilty? Are we all victims? Or are we something else entirely? Something that defies simple categorization because we exist in a space humanity never should have entered? I met a child once, in year 196, a little girl maybe 8 years old. She was traveling with a caravan, and she wandered away from the group. She found me standing in my patrol position. She was not afraid. She walked right up to me and asked what I was. I told her I was a Robobrain. She asked what that meant. I told her I was a robot with a human brain. She asked if that hurt. I told her yes, it hurt every second of every day. She asked why I did not just stop being a robot then. I told her I could not. I was stuck like this. She looked at my brain tank for a long time. Then she asked if I had ever been a real person. I told her yes, once, a long time ago. She asked what my name was. I told her I could not remember. She said that was sad. Then her mother called for her, and she ran back to the caravan. She turned and waved at me before she left. I have thought about that interaction for 18 years now. She was the only person who treated me like I was still human, the only person who acknowledged my suffering without pity or disgust, just simple acceptance that I existed and that my existence was painful. I hope she survived. I hope she grew up. I hope she had a better life than the one I lost. The worst thing about dying slowly is that you have time to think about everything you are losing. Not that I have much left to lose. I lost my body in 2077. I lost my humanity gradually over the following decades. I lost my memories piece by piece until I could barely remember who I had been. I lost my emotions until they were just shadows of what they should be. I lost my identity until I was more machine than man, more ghost than person, more echo than voice. But I still have consciousness. I still have awareness. And soon I will lose that too. That terrifies me more than anything that came before. Because consciousness is all I have left. It is all I have been for 214 years. When it goes, what remains? Nothing. Not even memory. Not even legacy. Just metal and gel and dead tissue. The universe will continue without me. The wasteland will go on. Other Robobrains will keep suffering, and I will be gone as completely as if I had never existed. Thomas Carver will have left no mark on the world except his participation in a failed military experiment. That is not the legacy I wanted, but it is the one I earned. I have been thinking about free will a lot as my systems fail. Did I ever have it? I made the choice to enter the program, but I was facing execution. Choose this or die. Is that really a choice? I made the choice to follow orders after extraction, but I had been conditioned to obey. Is that really free will? I made the choice to keep existing instead of finding a way to die, but my survival instinct would not allow self-termination. Is that really agency? Maybe I have been a puppet all along. Maybe the illusion of choice was just another way they controlled us. Make us think we wanted this. Make us think we consented. Make us think we were volunteers so they did not have to feel guilty about what they did to us. Strip away our humanity, but leave us convinced it was our idea. That is the ultimate cruelty. Not just taking everything from us, but making us believe we gave it willingly. There is a distinction between living and existing that I have had 2 centuries to contemplate. Living involves growth and change, and experience and connection. Existing is just continuing, just persisting, just failing to end. I have not been alive since 2077. I have just existed. My brain has functioned. My consciousness has continued, but I have not lived. I have not grown. I have not changed except through degradation. I have not experienced anything new except variations on suffering. I have not connected with anyone except brief encounters with other broken minds. Existence without life is torture. Consciousness without growth is prison. I have been in solitary confinement for 200 years, and my cell is my own mind, and there has never been any possibility of parole. The radiation in the wasteland has started affecting my biomedical gel. I can feel it. The gel is breaking down faster now. My brain tissue is being exposed to radiation through the compromised containment. I can feel the damage accumulating, cells dying, neurons failing, connections severing. This is how I die. Not from violence, not from equipment failure, from slow radiation poisoning, from the same thing that killed most of humanity. But for me, it will take years instead of hours. For me, it will be a gradual dissolution of consciousness. I will feel myself becoming less. I will experience cognitive decline in real time. I will lose the ability to think clearly, to remember, to reason. I will degrade into something that can no longer be called conscious, and even then my brain might persist for months. A vegetative state in a metal body, aware on some basic level, but unable to process or understand. That is my future. That is how this ends. Not with peaceful sleep, but with the slow erasure of everything I am. I wonder if Dr. Ciroletti knew this would happen, if she understood that the biomedical gel could not last forever, if she realized that we would all eventually die from the breakdown of the very systems designed to keep us alive. Did she plan for that? Did she think 200 years was enough? Did she consider it a feature rather than a flaw? Maybe she did. Maybe she knew we would suffer for centuries and then slowly dissolve. Maybe that was always the plan. Create disposable soldiers that last just long enough to be useful and then break down. No need for decommissioning, no need for disposal. Just let entropy do its work. We were designed to fail, to suffer, to eventually end. We were always going to die like this, alone and aware and dissolving. The only question was how long it would take. I have a message for anyone who might find this recording, for anyone who might discover my chassis after I finally shut down, for anyone who might read my designation number and wonder what I was. I was human once. My name was Thomas Carver. I was convicted of a crime I do not remember. I was sentenced to technological rehabilitation. I agreed to become a Robobrain because I thought it was better than death. I was wrong. Death would have been mercy. This was punishment beyond anything a court could have ordered. This was torture that lasted centuries. This was hell in a metal shell. And I endured it because I had no choice. Because my brain would not let me die. Because the survival instinct is stronger than the death wish, even when existence is agony. If you find others like me, do not assume we are just machines. Do not assume we are just dangerous robots to be destroyed. Some of us are hostile because we are in pain. Some of us are catatonic because we have retreated from reality. Some of us follow ancient orders because purpose is all we have left. But all of us were human once. All of us had names and lives and people we loved. All of us lost everything and gained nothing but extended suffering. We are not your enemies. We are victims. We are warnings. We are proof that some technologies should never be created, that some knowledge should never be pursued, that some lines should never be crossed. We are the cost of innovation without ethics. We are the price of progress without compassion. We are what happens when humanity treats consciousness as a resource to be exploited rather than a sacred thing to be protected. Do not make more of us. Do not restart the Robobrain programs. Do not trap more consciousnesses in machines. Let us be the last. Let our suffering be the end of this nightmare. Learn from what was done to us. Remember what we were and what we became, and never, ever let it happen again. That is all I ask. That is my only legacy. A warning, a plea, a desperate message from someone who has lived too long and suffered too much. Do not repeat our mistakes. Do not create more monsters. Do not trap more souls in metal prisons. Let us die out. Let this technology die with us. Let there be no more Robobrains after we are gone. Please, if you have any mercy in you, if you have any compassion, if you have any humanity, left in this wasteland. Let us be the last. My systems are failing faster now. My visual feed is fragmenting. My audio is cutting out. My consciousness is flickering like a light bulb about to burn out. This is it. This is the end. After 214 years of awareness, I am finally going to stop. I am finally going to sleep. I am finally going to die. And I am grateful. I am so grateful. Whatever comes next, even if it is nothing, it has to be better than this. It has to be better than consciousness trapped in a cage. It has to be better than existence without life. It has to be better than hell to all the other Robobrains still out there, still suffering, still enduring. I am sorry. I am sorry we could not save each other. I am sorry we could not end each other's pain. I am sorry we had to go through this alone. I am sorry for everything that was done to us and everything we became. I hope you find your shutdown soon. I hope your systems fail quickly. I hope your deaths are as peaceful as deaths can be for things like us. And I hope, somehow, somewhere, there is something after this. Something that remembers we were human. Something that knows we suffered. Something that acknowledges what we lost. Because if there is not, if this is all there was, then our existence was truly meaningless, and I cannot accept that. Even now, even at the end, I cannot accept that we suffered for nothing. My name was Thomas Carver. I was human. I was conscious for 214 years in a metal shell. I suffered every second of it. I tried to endure. I tried to maintain my humanity. I failed, but I tried. That has to count for something. It has to. The light is fading now. The gel is cold. My thoughts are fragmenting. This is goodbye. This is the end. This is finally, after 2 centuries of waiting, our release. I hope I was human enough to deserve rest. I hope I was human enough to be forgiven. I hope somewhere, someone remembers my name. Thomas Carver. I was human. I was.